Today I'm going to attempt to demystify 3 of the most influential artists' drum techniques. First one being Carl Watson, second one being Adam Beyer, and the third one being the king himself, Solomon. So let's hop straight in. So first thing that we're going to want to do is grab a 4 to the floor kick drum. First thing I notice is that this kick drum has a bit of low end that I want to remove. So I'm just going to add a high pass filter around 30 Hz. And second thing is I'm going to add an LFO tool because that kick drum is way too long. I also want to shorten it down, tighten it up, because house tracks generally do have like a tight, punchy kick drum. So this should sound a bit better. So something I have noticed with Carl Watson's claps is that he has one centered and then he sends another layer to the stereo field. So the way we're going to do that inside FL Studio is we're just going to grab 2 samples. So my first clap sample sounds like this. And then only thing I did there was I had a high pass filter at 250. And then I had just brought out some of the highs a little bit because at a later stage, I want my hi-hats to push through in that section. So then I have a second clap that is a little bit off the grid. I just moved it a little bit before because I wanted it to hit at a different time, just adds a bit of groove into the track. And onto that, I added a EQ. And the thing that's going to spread the stereo field is you're just going to add a stereo shaper onto it. And you're just going to go and select preset number 3, which is stereo wise 3. So you're going to kind of hear a stereo version of that clap. So if I play it all together. The hi-hats are pretty simple. Just grabbed a small sample. Simple, nothing much that you have to do. I just added an EQ, brought out all those lows because you really don't want anything to bleed out into that low end. And then just mix it in. Simple as that. So your final, like your main groove has been set. I think the next step that we'll have to do is add in percussions, add in those extra bits of nuances that those artists add in. And then we'll go into the final mix down, which is basically going to be adding in a little bit of extra sauce behind the scenes. And it's going to get that drum to really just come out and stick through that mix. So before we move on to the next one, I just want to have a quick disclaimer. The techniques that I'm showing you and the artists that I'm trying to recreate, I am going a bit off of the main topic, but I'm just trying to show you as much as I know and things that can help you to recreate sounds or recreate types of drum patterns that these artists may do or may do in the future. So yeah, if I do stray off a little bit and add in a couple of extra things, these are just things that I think would make that drum groove or that drum pattern or that type of technique just pop a little bit more. After listening to Carl Watson's tracks, you can understand that his drums are there for a reason. Nothing is there just to add space, or nothing is there because something is missing. All of his drums are really tight, and all of his drum grooves are made precisely to carry the groove. And what this kind of does is that it creates the space for the drums to be in, and it minimizes like the area and noise coming from the drums, which makes the listener focus more on the bass lines and extra pads that he has in the song. So for this track, I literally just brought in 2 percussion sounds, the first one being this one. On top of that, I wanted to add in a little bit of punch onto the kick drum, which is the second percussion sound. And it's basically just a kick drum that has been high passed. So if you look at the spectrum, you can kind of understand what type of sound it is. So that sounds literally if someone were to pull in a normal kick drum and then they were just going to basically layer a hat on top of it and then just remove all the low end. You can do it yourself. It's very easy. Just layer a kick and a hat together and then remove the low end of both of those things. And then you've got this punchy sound that can sit on top of the kick drum. And if I play those 2 together, it just adds a little bit of extra punch onto that kick drum. And if I just bring everything up, cool, and you're going to start getting this nice tight groove. And in the second half of this, just for the sake of it, I'm going to add in some open hi-hats, which is just going to drive that groove a little bit further on. So the hi-hat that I brought in was basically just another hat. And layered on top of the original, if I move it over to next to it, if I layer it on top of the original, it just adds a little bit of drive and it gives the original hi-hats a little bit more power. So if you check out the originals, and if you play it together, it just gives it a little bit more something in the background, just allows that hi-hat to push forward a little bit more. And in the entire groove, it just sounds like this. So I just added that in onto the second half. And another thing that I did was these hi-hats are skipping a beat. So the beat starts over here. I removed the hi-hats for that first beat. Initially it was like this. Took that first one out. It just gives the track a bit of a jump, and it gives it a bit of a bounce at the beginning. So I noticed that the track itself was lacking a bit of drive and a bit of power. So the first thing that I did was add in a top loop. It's sitting really low down, just to give it a bit of ambience in the background, a bit more drive. It's used as a layering tool, so I don't want it to be the main feature of the track. I just want it to sit in the background just to pump up the drums a little bit more. So the second thing I did after that was I created a reverb send. So how I did this was I went all the way down to the bottom, to the right of the mixer. If you right click and you go dock to right, it's going to send the track to the right of the mixer. So that's what I did to get that. And then after that, I just created a reverb. It looks like this. If you want to pause and copy that. And then I just added a LFO tool after that. So it's basically just side chaining the reverb to create a pumping effect. And I sent my clap 1, I sent it straight to that reverb. Clap 2, and I think I sent the top loop as well to that. So what that's basically going to do is it's going to add reverb into the background, but the reverb's not going to trigger when the kick drum hits. So it's going to duck and pump the reverb as the track goes on. It just gives it like it just basically does the same thing that the top loop does. It just gives more impact and a bit more feel to the drums. So yeah, so altogether the drum groove sounds like this. And then I added in a bass line underneath it just to give it some effect and some feel. And it sounds like this altogether. And the one thing that I do notice that a lot of these guys do, specifically the guys on Box of Cats, is that they send all their drums to one channel, and then they create a bus, and then they compress those drums all together, and it just glues the drums together all in all. So how I'm going to do that is I'm just going to go through all of my drums and send them to channel 9 one by one, and then I'm going to go back and remove them from the master. So now all these channels, instead of sending to the master channel, they're going to be sending to channel 9. I'm going to go and rename this to drum bus and do that. Add a separator onto this track. So now these are my drums. If I hold shift and click, it's going to lock that into place. And then instantly I'm just going to add a compressor. And I'm going to be using the Red 3 compressor just so you can see what's happening. My bad. So let's just check it out. So the drum settings that I want right now is kind of, I'm looking for a 3:1 or 4:1 ratio. So I'm going to go for 4:1 right now. Attack speed, I want it to be fast, and I want my release to be kind of fast as well. So I'm going to go for 80 milliseconds, fast attack time, and my ratio is about 4:1. Then the threshold depends. I'm going to try and aim for around 3 to 6 dBs of gain reduction on this track right now. So we're going to see how it goes. Yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the makeup gain up to about 5 or 6 dBs. So I'm sitting at 6 dBs right now. If you're wondering where I'm looking at the top here and the top left of my screen. It just gives me increments over there. I'm going to add about 6 dBs of makeup gain. And then turn it down. Cool. Another alternative that you could use instead of using a compressor and kind of have a glue compressor, you could go and you could get a free plugin. It's called the Ferric TDS. Something that I really love and I use all the time actually. This is a lot more simple. It's basically a lot more simple than what you think it is. So the dynamics is basically how much you want to compress. So it's one knob, turn it up, how much you want to compress, and it's showing you how much it's compressing over here. Then how much you want to saturate that tracks is going to be done over here. So kind of going to aim for a gain 5 to 6 dBs of gain reduction. So I'm just going to look over here and just check out that mark over there is 5. So I'm going to get more or less around that area. So let's check it out. Let's try it first. Cool. And the reason why we're using a fast recovery time is because we kind of want the compressor to activate and then deactivate before the next sound comes. because we don't want it to compress unnecessarily, and we don't want it to compress sounds that we don't need it to compress. So we're going to most of the time have a fast recovery time. So that's kind of that. Then saturation, I'm just going to turn it up all the way. You might be able to hear what it sounds like, you might not, but I'm just going to accentuate it and then turn it down to the point at which I want it. Cool. So if an option for you not to use a compressor and you rather want to use this, I love this personally. I'm not sponsored by it. It's a free plugin. I would go and grab this and just play around with it. Just see what it does, see how you can use it, and see how you can just do what you want to do. So yeah, so either or, you're going to use a compressor or the Ferric TDS and do that. Another option and another thing that these guys do pretty often is that they take their drum bus and they send it to another channel. So I'm going to click on the drum bus and I'm going to send it to channel 10 over here, and I'm just going to name it parallel, if I can spell properly. I'm going to name it parallel, and what I'm going to do now is that all this drum signal is sending to the parallel channel. What I'm going to do then is I'm going to add a compressor, and I'm just going to distort the hell out of it, or not distort, compress the hell out of it. So I'm looking for like 10 to 15, maybe even 20 dBs of gain reduction on here, and then we're going to work from there. And then what you can do after that, once you have that, is once it's completely and utterly completely distorted, you can then go and add something called, if I can't find it, so I'm just going to add a distortion plugin over here, the Fast Distort. I'm going to grab it, and I'm just going to check what it sounds like first. And once you have that, so you're going to compress it, you're looking for 15 to 20 dBs of gain reduction. Then you're going to add a fruity fast distort, or any distortion really. And then what you're going to do is you're going to mix this into the drums. So it's going to add a bit of grit and a bit of dirt into the background of the mix, but it just allows the drums to pump a little bit more. So I'm just going to play it and just mix it up, and you can see what it sounds like. So what you can see that it's kind of in the background, you can hear the claps coming out a lot more, and the hi-hats on its own are just adding a bit of grit onto that high-end spectrum. And that's kind of what you're going to do to get that Carl Watson type of drums. It's more box of cats at this point. So all in all, I'm just going to do a quick playback and then you can check it out. So next thing up, we're going to try and do Adam Beyer. And so going in, I already chose out my kick sample. So onto the kick drum, I just added a LFO tool. It's another thing. It's just basically just removing the tail of the kick drum. After that, I just added in a EQ. All we're doing is removing everything below 40 Hertz, and we're taking out this frequency. So I want it to be a little bit cleaner, a little bit nicer sounding. And after that, we're going to add in a rumble. So this rumble was a little bit long, but if I play it to you as it is, sounds like that. I'm just going to remove it and make it one beat. Simple and easy. Then onto my rumble, I added in another LFO tool. So I'm side chaining this to the kick drum. After that, I just added in an EQ. Everything below 50 Hertz got cut out. I don't want that mud in the low end. And then everything above, say about like 130, 160 Hertz is getting cut out in the high end because I don't want it to interfere with everything else coming later. So rumble on its own sounds like this. It's going to have a nice pumping sound. And with the kick drum on top of it, that rumble on the kick drums is going to like pump that low end. All in all, sounds like this. Moving on, we're going to grab some hi-hats, and the hi-hats that I chose is just basically open hi-hats, and you kind of want it to sound a little bit distorted. So grab a loud and nice open sounding hi-hat, just paste it down. I'm going to have it there. Just going to copy that straight over into all the cool ones done. I'm going to label it open hat, OH, and then send that straight to the mixer. And the hi-hat sounds like this. Very hard, very distorted. If you didn't have a hi-hat like this and you wanted to create one with a normal one, very simple technique. You just got to go and add a fruity fast distort. Very simple, very easy to do. You're just going to pump it up and distort the shit out of it. If you were not using a hi-hat that was already distorted, that's how you would get that sound. And then simple, just add that. And then after that, you want to add an EQ2 because you don't want that low end to get there. Because with dealing with tracks like these, you're kind of sitting on a position where it's very easy for that low end to get dirty. You kind of want it to be just the kick and the rumble at most, kind of. You want to get that like really sub low end in that section of the track so that you want to remove the high end from everything else. So what I'm doing is onto these hi-hats, I'm just going to add a high pass filter. So get everything out of that low end. So now it's not going to interfere at all. So I'm just going to turn everything on. Cool. So next thing on, we're going to tackle on some percussions, extra sounds that is going to drive the track forward, and then we'll go into the bass line. So I just pulled in a percussion sound and kind of wanted to like groove. Kind of wanted to go doof, 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 like that. So set it up there for now. Let's check out how it sounds. Yeah, so that's going to groove quite nicely. I'm just going to rename this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove that low end as well. Simple. Basically, everything's going to get their low end removed. Cool. It's going to be nice there. I'm going to remove the high end as well because I just want that low mid frequency to pop out really nicely. I'm going to solo it just quickly. Cool. That's how I want it to be. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a stereo shaper. And I'm going to do the preset stereo wise 3. It's going to send that sound, spread it out straight into the stereo field, and I kind of want it to sit there instead of being in the middle with everything else, so it kind of sticks out a little bit more. So all in all, it should sound like this. So moving on to the ride cymbals and the closed hats or shakers, I kind of pulled in a sample that sounds like this for the ride. But I'm not going to put it into the playlist because I want to manipulate it a bit more inside the channel rack. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the ride sample. I'm going to drag it, and I'm going to place it somewhere there. I'm going to go to the second stage, which is the envelope stage, and then remove the tack, put it all the way down, remove the hold, remove the decay, remove this release, and remove the everything. Just have it as nothing, right? Then I'm going to make it every first and second, basically every quarter note. I'm going to extend this like that so it re-triggers itself. And then as it being like this, I'm going to just adjust the decay until I get a point where I really like it. I kind of want the sound to start and kind of fade down and end before the next one starts. So let's check it out. So I kind of like it over there, so I'm going to add that in as it is into my playlist. Just going to make sure I rename everything so everyone knows where everything is. So that's going to be like that. So I'm going to add this straight into my mixer as it is. And the first thing that I want to do instantly is just sidechain this because I want it to pump in the background. So the sound's kind of pumping up nicely in the background. And after this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add something called the pancake. So what this is doing is basically just going to send that signal left and right through the speakers. I want it to kind of bounce between left and bounce between right. And that's kind of the plugin that I'm going to use to do it. So instantly, if you have it, just eighth notes. Actually, quarter notes sound better. I'm just going to turn down the mix. And that's going to send like left and right signal. If you didn't have Pancake and you wanted to know a different way to do it, all you have to do is right click the right click the pan knob, create automation. And once you have it, I'm just going to send this there, Control G to group it. Basically just going to send it left and right as it is. So that's kind of how you would want to do it, but less than that. So I'd send it about there, and I'd send it about there, roughly more or less how you're going to do it. And I'm just going to send that signal left and right through the speakers, but I am, for this sake, just going to use Pancake because it's going to make my life a little bit easier. So I'm choosing quarter notes. Let's make it half notes just to make it a bit more easy. Cool. Instantly after this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a reverb send because I want to send that ride straight through. So I'm going to click channel number 24, 124, send it to right, rename this to reverb, whatever color I choose, which is going to be orange for now. Grabbing my reverb 2, instantly going to drag the dry all the way down. Wet is going to be all the way up to 100%. Once again, I'm looking in the top left over here, and bass all the way down. Dampening around about 10,000. Remove the low cut, about 1,000 should be fine, and the high cuts all the way up. I want the area to be quite large and the decay to be quite nice as well. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to send this ride straight in there, and I'm going to use this knob over here, and that's judging how much volume is being sent to the reverb channel. So with that on, let me just solo it, and I will turn it up. Cool. Kind of like that where it is now. I'm going to add an LFO tool onto this just to sidechain it a little bit more, just so it like the ride sound just should pump in the background with the rumble. So I've got this going. Cool. I like how that sounds at the moment, so I'm just going to duplicate this over everything, and then keep saving my tracks. I don't know why. So once done, going to grab into the closed hat. Checking out the sample looks like this. What I'm going to do once again is I'm going to drag this into my channel rack. I'm going to add it in here. Create a new one called CH, closed hat, and then just put it straight into the mixer for now. Turn it down a bit. And then instantly for my shakers, just going to grab C5, put it onto every note. That is very wrong. Don't ever do that again. Zoom out a little bit. I was a bit too close there. So I'm going to put it there, 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 there. There we go. That's how I want it. So what I'm going to do is, once again, I'm going to make each of these notes touch each other because I'm going to go into the patch itself, go to the automation, and I'm going to do the same thing. Turn everything down and use the decay to judge how long I want the sound to be. Kind of like the way it is now. So just add it in. Just play it in with the drum groove as itself. See what it sounds like. So as it is, it kind of sounds cool, but it just doesn't sound like it's grooving enough. So I'm going to add a EQ. Just have it set up there. I'm going to boost up the high end. I really wanted to peak out a lot. And then instantly after that, I'm going to add a flanger. What the flanger is going to do is it's basically just going to manipulate the audio so it doesn't sound the same every single time it gets played. I'm going to turn down the mix. Just gives it a bit of variation. What I need to do next is I need to try and add some more variation into this because it will get very, very boring for you listening to listen to this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mess around with the velocity. And okay, that's a bit low. Grab it there. We see how it sounds now if I solo it. Cool. So that sounds a lot better than just the original, like straight forward to the floor. It sounds way too mechanical. So we've got the groove. The main groove is kind of mostly down. So adding the bass line is kind of where it starts to get a little bit more groovy. So I'm adding a 16-note position. So it sounds like this. Sounds absolutely horrible. Running Serum. So let's start the bass line. Kind of want it to be envelope 1. Going to be short and nice and tight. So I want it to sit, drop it down to 3. Yeah, drop it down 3. And then add a second one. Going to drop it down 2. Add 5 voices. Kind of want it to be a little bit more stereo. And then add MG low 12 is fine. Add B. That's where we're sitting right now. So going to go to envelope 2. Drag it all the way down. Kind of want to get a nice sound. Kind of want to open this up. That's how I want to sit. So I'm going to add in some distortion. But I don't want it to, I kind of want it to like be loud, but I don't want it to be there like all the way. So I'm going to add envelope 3 and I'm going to add it onto the drive of this. Cool, like how that sounds. Maybe add a compressor. Have it set to that. Bump it up. What I'm going to do is actually I'm going to add a hyper distortion, turn the mix down of the hyper, turn the dimension down to like 2% mix up. So I'm going to spread it out. Cool, and that's kind of where I want the sound to sit at the moment. Just going to send that straight into my mixer. And we can work from there, adding in an EQ. Don't want to get that low rumbles in there. I just want to kind of get that plucky sound. There's a ringing. Remove that. And then add in an LFO tool. First of all, to get that nice pumping sound. Then after that, I'm going to add in a compressor. 4:1, fast attack times fast release time. Turn it up a bit. Just wanted to kind of tame down those fast transients. Boom, bam. All in all, right now it sounds like this. What we could actually do is turn up this distortion amount. Right there, get it a little bit more dirty, turn up the fat and the drive. So yeah, all together I'm just going to play the groove to you and you can kind of see where it sits. Cool. Something that you could do to the bass line is if you were to go to the analog and you went and got yourself the, make sure I got it right here, get the CWJ, yeah, this one, and you activated the triangle, you could have your LFO 1 modulating the wavetable position. And that's just kind of how your bass lines should sit. In techno music, the low end should be seen as kind of like a monster. And what I mean by that is that your low end's gotta kind of move. It can't be a static low end. It can't just sit in the middle. Your low end needs to like kind of be seen as the beast out of control that's trying to escape the chain that it's in. So as being as dirty as it should also move from side to side. Your audience shouldn't just be listening to the same groove the whole time. It should have a bit of movement in the low end specifically. So instantly, when I'm thinking about the Solomun type of track, I'm looking for drums that sounds organic. I'm looking for drums that sounds kind of not robotic. It doesn't need to be 4 to the floor. It needs to be a little bit loose, a little bit groovy. That's how you're going to get that really nice Solomun style and that Solomun type of sound. So going into it, I've got the drum beat and groove laid down quite nicely over here because I just wanted to make sure that everything was sitting properly. but I'm going to go over everything individually. So I've got the kick drum. First thing I did was added an LFO tool. Next thing I added was a clap. And the thing with Solomun's claps is that he normally has one or two. First one being normal, second one being quite organic, which means that it sounds quite real compared to a digital sounding clap. So I'm going to solo this first clap. And I'm going to go to the second one. Check the difference. The main difference here being that the clap has two main transients. You've got the first one hitting on beat, then you've got the second one hitting a little bit off beat. So if you essentially didn't have a clap that looked like this, that had two separate hits, all you could do is just drag your clap and delay it a little bit. So with the original, if I did that as it is, it would just add the kind of the same effect without you having to have a sample like that. I kind of like how that sounds originally with this clap, so I'm just going to have it in there. So the next thing that I want to look at is kind of the bongos and the types of extra percussions. The reason I'm using bongos is because Solomun's music really tends to incorporate real instruments, or instruments that you would hear playing those sounds if they were played in a band, or if they were just played by people in the streets kind of thing. First bongo I added was this one. And the second bongo I added, you heard it coming up there, was these two. And it just kind of just keeps on with the groove, you know, like the groove just needs to go on. I placed them there because it just is all about where you want them to be put. I had them looping over these two bars, one to the other, just to give a bit of variation. So the beat all in all with that end sounds like this. Cool. Next thing I want to do is add shakers. Shakers are quite important in these types of genres because they add a vibe, they add a flow, they add a rhythm. So the first thing that I want to do is not add shakers that sound too organic, too four to the floor type of thing. I'm saying it a lot because I'm emphasizing it, but this is what the shakers sound like on there, like on its own. First thing I want to do there is basically just add an LFO tool. Make it pump, make it move a little bit more. And then the next thing I added was some toms. And this part is going to go hand in hand with the bass line when I created just now, but it sounds like this. Kind of bump that all the way up. LFO tool once again because I don't want it to clash with the kick drum. So all in all, together, it kind of sounds like this. And on top of that, I just want to add in two bass lines. One of them being just a regular, simple sub bass line. Drop it to. Have it there. I think we just choose a key. So we go with. Let's go with G. Why not? And then we've got this going on. Send that in. Guess what we're going to do? Sidechain it. So you want to have that sidechaining to the kick drum. You got to have your bass line. It's going to make people groove. Then what I want to do is add this tom. I'm going to click on the tom, go to my sub, right click and say sidechain to this track, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the Fruity limiter. And what the sidechain is going to do is it's going to send ghost signal into this. So if I come to the compressor, come to the sidechain section, go to tom, and then just set this up. It's going to make the tom trigger the sub to duck. So whenever the tom plays, that sub is ducking. You can see it happen here. I've got that. So now on top of that bass line, I want to have a separate bass that just plays a little bit higher. So the way I'm going to do this is kind of have two voices, MG low 12, MG low 18, then bring it down. Just get some chords going. So what key am I in? I'm in G. So I've got that going. And I'm going to go chords. Send it in there. I want to spread it out a bit, so I'm going to send that up and up. Send it there. 5 voices there. I'm going to add the LFO tool to this, so it opens and closes it. So now I've got like a really nice sounding kind of pad going on. Instantly what I want to do is I want to add some reverb onto this. Hall, size, decay, low cut, up. So I want to go from there, maybe to there. And then another D on top of that, maybe. So we do that, kind of have that going on. But now what I want to do is I'm going to add in a analog, go to my basic CJW, so I'm going to do that. Then I want this to kind of move with my LFO, but at a different rate. So I'm going to do half, and we're going to see what it sounds like. That sounds. So I'm going to add that into this. I'm going to remove that low end because I don't need it right now. Add a bit of side chaining onto that. And just mix it in. Bring this closer together just because I don't like how it sounds. Sounds too boring. So we do that, and then we do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We do 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 4, 5. Add another I on top of that. And then we kind of sit like that for now. And then we could go up again. So we do 4 there. Add another C on top of that, just to spread it out. Cool. So we have this at the moment.